Moving on to the next question, you mentioned that the loss of language has negative effects for local communities. For example, in British Columbia, as you mentioned, in Canada, research has shown that language loss has resulted in higher suicide rate for adolescents in the indigenous community. So you've shown us the negative impact of language loss. What kind of benefits do you think your research has shown or will show for the revival of endangered languages?
That's a wonderful question, and I think that we should all ask this question because we will all be asked in the future to contribute some of our tax for such intangible endeavors. And then many people will say, well, I don't want to pay tax for language revival. Why should I, etc. So I think that we need to prepare ourselves for the future questions. Just as many people will ask, why should we, pay for religion? Why should we pay for climate? Why should we pay for that? So, I mean, this is something which is very important. I would argue that the reasons are, again, tripartite. So 3 types of reasons. I don't know if you notice, but I always divide my answers to 3. I think it might come from my army days, in which you had 3 soldiers in every in every parade. You had like 1, 2, 3. I don't know why. So the reason I am a revivalist, and I have dedicated a major part of my life to language reclamation, to revivalistics, is totally, to start with, totally deontological or moral or ethical. Any language that was subject to linguicide, language killing, deserves to be reclaimed. By definition, ipso facto. If you come to me and you prove to me that your heritage language was subject to linguicide, I will do my best to assist you with reconnecting with this language, regardless of any benefits. I mean, this is simply deontological, tout court. This is the response that I have to people like Anthony Forster, who said in Adelaide, where I'm sitting right now, in South Australia, Australia Australis, he said in 1843, so what is it, 178 years ago, he said, the natives would be sooner civilized if their language was extinct. This is what he said. This is exactly what he said. He wrote it. I have an obligation to assist people who suffered under such linguicidal ideology. I have the obligation to assist people like Howard Richards, my friend, like many others. I know dozens of Aboriginal people who were stolen, were kidnapped from their mothers. I know all their stories, I mean, one by one. This is a moral obligation that we have as people who are linguistically advanced to assist others who had been linguicided. The other reason is simple. It's aesthetic. It's beautiful to have a diversity of languages with amazing words that can please you when it comes to taste and beauty. For example, in Bangla, when you talk about an emu, you can refer to one emu as Waraija. But if you see 2 emus, you say Waraijal Bili. So it's a dual, 2 emus. If you see 3 emus, you say Waraijari. If you see many emus, like I've just seen 11 emus, little chicks, and 1 father, because in emus, the father is the one who raises the emus, not the mother. The mother goes and does her own things. It's a father who mothers the 11 emus, but I saw so many emus, so I say, Waraijalyarana. So we have a singular, waraija, we have a dual, waraijalbili, we have a plural, waraijari, and we have a superplural, waraijalyarana. This is simply beautiful, aesthetically pleasing to a person like me, but to also many other people, definitely Bangla people, that we have not just singular and plural like in English, emu, emus, but we have 4 possible numbers, 4 possible countings. You go to Yagan in Tierra del Fuego, in the country of fire between Argentina and Chile, or in Argentina and Chile, and you have a word like mamshapinatapai. Mamshapinatapai. It means to look one at the other, hoping that the other side would initiate something that both of us really want to do, but none of us has had the guts to initiate. This is beautiful because I had this concept when I was 15, but I did not have a word for it. And then when I studied Yagan, suddenly I discovered this beautiful word. So it is aesthetically pleasing to have as many languages as possible in the world. We had 400 Aboriginal languages in Australia. Only 3% are alive and kicking. What happened to all the other 97% of languages? We are losing the beauty of these other languages. Some of them we have already lost. So this has to do with aesthetics. We have 7,000 diverse languages in the world today. Predictions say within 100 years, we will only have 700 languages. So 90% of the world's languages would become sleeping beauties or dreaming beauties. We will lose a lot of aesthetic pleasure when that happens. This has to do with the taste. But the most important reason, which answers your question, why bother about language revival, is not the deontological one, which is my raison d'etre, my ikigai, but rather the utilitarian one. So in other words, you revive a language, what happens which is useful for society? Not that is the right thing to do, as I said, the ethical, not that is the beautiful thing to do, as I said, the aesthetic, but rather the beneficial or the useful thing to do. Just as you mentioned, in Canada, they found a link between language loss and youth suicide. But what I have discovered is that there is also a link between language revival and diminishing of suicidal ideation. There is a link, a utilitarian link, a link which is good for society when it comes to how much money you spend on mental health, etc. There is a link between reclaiming a dreaming, sleeping beauty and reducing the cases of diabetes in Australian society when it comes to Aboriginal people. As you know, Aboriginal people are 10 times more likely to suffer from diabetes compared with white fellas, with non-Aboriginal Australians. Why? Why do they suffer from diabetes? A doctor, a medical doctor, would tell you it's because their sugar levels are high. Yeah, of course. I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist for that. But why is the sugar level high? Oh, because they're obese. And why are they obese? Oh, because they eat horrible food. And why do they eat horrible food? Well, because they hate themselves. Why do they hate themselves? Well, because they are depressed. Why are they depressed? Well, think about it. You lose your language. You lose your land. You lose your mother. You lose this, you lose that. You have many reasons to be depressed. When you reconnect with your language, you can disentangle this, you can kind of fight this domino effect. So I argue blatantly, with a lot of chutzpah, with a lot of nerve, that language reclamation can result in diminishing diabetes cases. And I mean it. I don't mean that you bring me a very fat, kind of high sugar level person, I reclaim the language, suddenly they do not suffer from diabetes. No, this is not what I'm saying. I'm not like a, you know, like a crazy doctor. What I'm saying is that language revival empowers the well-being of mental health. Language reclamation improves the happiness of people. You know, you have happiness researchers all over the world. Recently, it was found that the happiest children are in the Netherlands. I've just read it in the papers. And, you know, they analyze why it is in the Netherlands, etc. Happiness is very, very important. I think, generally speaking, that colonized people hate two types of people as a generalization. They hate the colonizers, of course, but much more importantly and much more tragically, they hate themselves. Why? Because the colonizers convinced the colonized that the colonized were part of the fauna, part of the animal kingdom. And this is the unfortunate reality that Aboriginal people in Australia, there were actually, some of them were hunted down, just like animals. They were regarded as animals. So it kind of trickles down. This is a tragedy. Language reclamation results in reconnecting with your cultural autonomy, with your intellectual sovereignty, with your spirituality, with your soul, resulting in empowerment, well-being improvement, less depression, less obesity, because you don't eat the food that you do not deserve. You give yourself better food, less sugar levels, and less diabetes. So coming back to your question, when you reclaim a language, the government gives the revivalists $1 million, the revivalists would save the government $5 million, because there would be fewer people going to hospitals, fewer people going to mental hospitalization, fewer people needing to have dialysis, more people working, more people being happy. Happiness is good for society. You don't want to have people who are disadvantaged, unprivileged. Why should you want society to have such people? You know, you want for the harmony of society to have all intangible heritage being respected and being treated with dignity, and you want people to be happy. So language revival has three benefits: moral, aesthetic, and utilitarian. It's the right thing to do, it's the beautiful thing to do, and it's the useful, beneficial thing to do for society.